Welcome to our 2021 convocation. My name is Brother Jayananda, and I'm giving the class this evening on the autobiography of a yogi. The title of the class is Living the Vision of Autobiography of a Yogi. And this is sort of an unusual class. It's not a class that we would normally have in a convocation, talking about a particular book. But this year, 2021, marks the 75th anniversary of the publishing of Autobiography of a Yogi. It was published in 1946, and we thought it fitting that we have a class reminding us of what this great treasure is that's been given to us. I think in talking about the anniversary of the autobiography, we have to picture ourselves back in 1946 when this first came out. And we have some wonderful first-hand accounts from the disciples that were around our guru in those days. And I wanted to read from the reminiscences of Mrlini Mata, who remembered when this came out. Now, she was a young girl in the ashram, and she was in Encinitas at the time. Let me read this. Mrlini Mata said, "One evening in the Encinitas Hermitage, late in 1946, we younger devotees were busily engaged with our kitchen duties when Gurudeva came through the door. All activity stopped, and our attention was fully concentrated on his broad smile and an even more beautiful than usual twinkle in his eye. His hand was behind his back, concealing something. He called for a few others to come and had us line up in front of him. Then he displayed before us the hidden treasure, an advanced copy of his book, Autobiography of a Yogi. Amidst the ohs and ahs, we could scarcely express our joy to behold at last the long-awaited account of his life among the great saints and sages of India, with which he had so often enthralled us during precious hours in his company. He opened a few pages, saving for last the illustration of Mahavatar Babaji. Almost breathlessly, we offered our reverence and absorbed the blessing we felt to be among the first to glimpse the likeness of our Param Guru. In early December, we were all summoned to Mount Washington to participate in the arrival of parcels of books from the publisher and in preparing them for posting to the many eager devotees. Hundreds of back orders. Weeks ahead of time, when any of us had free moments, we were engaged in typing address labels on one of our old manual typewriters. Huge tables, flat boards on sawhorses, were set up in the office, ready for assembly line wrapping of each individual book in brown mailing paper off a huge roll, hand-cutting it to just the right size, affixing labels and postage stamps, moistened first from wet sponges. No automation or mailing machines in those days. But oh, what a joy to participate in this momentous event to Self-Realization Fellowship history. The world would know our Blessed Master through this sublime ambassador. In the third floor sitting room, that's here at Mother Center, upstairs on the third floor, there's a room, and as you go up the stairs, it's the room right in front of you as you finish climbing the stairs. In the third floor sitting room, Gurudeva sat at a desk for hours without a break, autographing every book. The books were removed from the publisher's shipping cartons, opened, and placed before him in a steady stream as he signed each one, emptying one fountain pen while another was being refilled. It was late when he summoned me to come upstairs. He was still autographing books. The senior disciples urged him to take some rest, but he refused even to consider it until every book in that shipment was signed with his blessings. He had the most beatific expression on his face, as though a very real part of himself and his love for God were going out to all the world in those printed pages, and it should not be withheld one extra moment. It was with inexpressible joy that we sat at his feet to meditate in the wee hours of the morning. The Master had handed each one of us a personal copy of this treasure, and all other copies had been wrapped for mailing in the morning or packed for sending to his temples to Hollywood and San Diego. Autobiography of a Yogi was on its way to a divine destiny, ultimately to carry the Guru's blessings and love for God to millions of seeking souls. You can picture our Guru in those days, and the exhilaration, the joy he felt at having written this book, which he was destined to write. Brother Bhaktananda tells us that he remembers standing on the veranda of this building with a few other monks when Master said to the group, he said that Divine Mother had told him that he had to write certain books in this lifetime, and that once he wrote those books, his mission on earth was finished, was completed. And he said Autobiography of a Yogi was one of those books. We know that from reading the book itself, because in there's a section where he talks about Sri Yukteswar asking him to write this book, to write the account of Lahiri Mahashai's life. And this is in the chapter, Rama is raised from the dead. The Master writes, our Guru writes, Sri Yukteswar dismissed the little group and motioned me to a blanket seat at his feet. Yogananda, he said with unusual gravity, you have been surrounded from birth by direct disciples of Lahiri Mahashai. The great Master lived his sublime life in partial seclusion and steadfastly refused to permit his followers to build any organization around his teachings. He made, nevertheless, a significant prediction. Lahiri Mahashai said, about 50 years after my passing, an account of my life will be written because of a deep interest in yoga that will arise in the West. The message of yoga will encircle the globe. It will aid in establishing the brotherhood of man, a unity based on humanity's direct perception of the one Father. My son, Yogananda, Sri Yukteswar went on, you must do your part in spreading that message and in writing that sacred life. 50 years after Lahiri Mahashai's passing in 1895, culminated in 1945, the year of completion of this present book. So our Guru completed the book in 1945. It was published the following year and came out late in the year, 1946. It was as we were reading with Merlin Mana's account, it was a very, must have been a very joyous time here in the ashram as this book became ready to go out. We have another shorter account from Sally Sudamata, who was there in those days. And she remembers the actual packaging up of the books and sending them out. And she said here, there were just a few of us living in the Encinitas Hermitage when Paramahansaji was writing Autobiography of a Yogi, a project that took him a number of years to complete. I was living there for part of that time. Guruji did most of the writing of that book in his study at the Hermitage. I remember there were times when he might dictate all night long, and other occasions when it would continue for the entire day, or even longer. I was not involved with the secretarial duties like Dayama and Anandama, who would sometimes take down his words in shorthand and at other times use the typewriter. My responsibility was mostly cooking their meals so that they could work uninterruptedly. When Autobiography of a Yogi arrived from the publisher, there was a great jubilation. Right away, Guruji wanted us to send out his book to all those who had placed advance orders. So after the initial celebration, we were very busy filling the big backlog of orders that had been accumulated. Sister Sheila and I wrapped many copies, stamped the packages, and got them all ready. Then we brought the car around, opening the trunk and all of the doors. When the car had been completely filled, we drove the parcels of books down to the main post office in Los Angeles. We were delighted. At last, Autobiography of a Yogi was going to be available to people everywhere. This great book that Master had seen, he had said it's going to change the lives of millions. He had looked into the future and seen the importance of this book outwardly about his life, but much more than that. It's really, I've often referred to Autobiography of a Yogi as a guidebook for spiritual seekers. It's a book that shows the principles and the hidden laws that are in creation that help a person find God and make their way back to God. And also in Autobiography of a Yogi, Master, our Guru, knowing that he was going to write this book, he went back to India, as we know, in 1935 to visit his Guru. But he writes of that time, of going to visit Keshavananda, Swami Keshavananda up in the Himalayas. This was after he had gone to the Kumbh Mela. And Yogananda writes, "My object in seeking out Keshavananda was connected with this book," meaning Autobiography of a Yogi. "I had never forgotten Sri Yukteswar's request that I write the life of Lahiri Mahashaya. During my stay in India, I was taking every opportunity to contact direct disciples and relatives of the Yoga Avatar. Recording their conversations in voluminous notes, I verified facts and dates, and collected photographs, old letters, and documents. My Lahiri Mahashaya portfolio began to swell. I realized with dismay that ahead of me lay arduous labors in authorship. I prayed that I might be equal to my role as biographer of the colossal guru." I remember back in 1996, this was the 50th anniversary of the publishing of Autobiography of a Yogi. A group of us monks thought that it would be a good idea to put a display up here in the main hall of the administration building of the IHQ, International Headquarter Building. And we had an idea to put the display over in the fireplace area. Those of you who have visited here, if you come in the front doors, off to the right is a little nook in the large room. That's a fireplace in there. And we just thought it would be a nice place to put some things out to remember that this occasion was here for a year. That this is the 50th anniversary of this great book. I was working in Dayamata's office at the time, so I was the what they call the pitch man. I had to go in and make my case for why this was a good idea. Ma was all in favor of it. Dayamata she was very encouraging, and I remember we searched around. What can we put on display? Well, we had one area where we brought the chair up from Encinitas, the chair to his desk in his study. And we have a picture of this in the archives of our guru sitting at a desk in Encinitas writing. And, it just brought the idea of him coming up with this autobiography and writing it and dictating it. And to look at the chair that he was probably sitting in at the time when he was doing this, at least some of the time, it made an immediacy. It made a connection to the writing of the book. I remember we had a long cabinet, and in it we went around and asked all of the disciples who were there in those days. And we asked them, "Do you have a copy of the autobiography? Do you have the copy that Guruji gave you?" And most of them did. In fact, I don't remember anyone who said they didn't. They all lent us their copies. So in this case, we lined them up. We opened the front cover to show Master's writing. And Master it was interesting. He had different messages for each one, all conveying blessings, all signed by him. Dayamata also says that our guru, through the years, he knew he had to write this book. So even before 1935, when he went back to India, he was dictating it. He was writing things. And this is what she said. She said, "The writing of Autobiography of a Yogi was a project that took many years of Paramahansaji's time to complete. When I came to Mount Washington in 1931, he had already begun work on it. Once when I was in his study attending to some secretarial duties for him, I was privileged to see one of the first chapters he wrote. It was about the Tiger Swami. Gurudeva asked me to save it because it would be going into his book. However, the greatest portion of his autobiography was composed during the period of 1937 to 1945. Paramahansaji had so many responsibilities and commitments. He was not able to work on his book every day, but in general, he devoted the evenings to it, as well as whatever other free time he was able to put his mind on it. A small group of us, Anandamata, Shraddhamata, and myself, were around him much of that time, helping to type the manuscript. After each part was typed, Gurudeva would give it to Taramata, who served as his editor. One day, while working on his autobiography, the Guru told us, "When I have left this world, this book will change the lives of millions. It will be my messenger when I am gone." When the manuscript was finished, Taramata went to New York to find a publisher for it. Paramahansaji had great respect for her knowledge and for her editorial abilities, and often praised her publicly. Gurudeva's reaction to the completion of the book was joy that no words can express. He inscribed my copy, as he did many of the other devotees who were here in the ashram. When I received it, I knew, having helped to type the manuscript, that this was an immortal book, one that, for the first time, revealed hidden truths which had never before been presented in such a clear and inspirational way. No other author has approached Guruji's explanation of miracles, reincarnation, karma, the afterlife, and the other wonderful spiritual truths contained in its pages. What would be his reaction to the book's renown today? He would be humbly touched that Autobiography of a Yogi has reached into all corners of the earth, to people of every culture, race, religion, and age, and that it has been received with tremendous acclaim and enthusiasm throughout these many years. Though Guruji never dwelt on his own importance, he certainly did believe in the great value of what he wrote, because he knew he was writing truth. It puts us in the presence of the Guru during this time when this tremendous book came out. And really, when Dayamata was talking about it, here, this quote that I just read, all of these quotes come back to me. When I'm reading these direct, what Merlini Mata said, Salisuddha Mata, Dayamata. In 1996, I was talking about this display we put up. One portion of the display was we had thought, what if we asked each of the disciples who were around in those times what they remember from those days? I thought it a great idea. So again, as the pitchman, I went to Dayamata and I said, what if I went around and interviewed people? And Merlini Mata and Salisuddha Mata and Brother Nanda, my brother Bhaktananda, all of these people to remember what they, to capture what they remember from those days. Well, again, Ma was okay with that. And that's usually a difficult assignment here. These are very, very busy people. But there's a certain power that comes with saying, Dayamata asked me to ask you. Everybody stops. But some of the reminiscences were just so powerful and so personal. And so you knew that these were deep expressions of true feeling and insight that they'd carried with them for years. So when Dayamata was saying here, no other author has approached Guruji's explanation of miracles, reincarnation, karma, the afterlife, and the other wonderful spiritual truths contained in its pages. This is one of the aspects of this tremendous book. It's a foundation of not only the teachings of SRF, but really of truth, the foundations of what life is in this world and how we can make sense of it. Think about it. I mean, things like reincarnation and karma. Where else do you learn these things? People throw these terms around, but no one really understands. You read Autobiography of a Yogi and you understand exactly what is meant by these terms. If people really understood karma, for instance, I think we'd save the world right now from so much difficulty it's going through in its search for fairness or its search for justice. The understanding of karma. Master writes, the equilibrating law of karma, as expounded in the Hindu scriptures, is one of action and reaction, cause and effect, sowing and reaping. In the course of natural righteousness, each man becomes the molder of his own destiny. Whatever universal energies he himself, wisely or unwisely, has set in motion, must return to him as a starting point, like a circle inexorably completing itself. I think in future ages, when Webster's dictionary is written up, that will be the definition in it about karma. It's so perfect, so full of truth. And think if the world really understood this, or if people realized that these principles existed. People would start seeing the universal laws behind the inexplicable things. Master describes many of these things in his autobiography. And I think that anyone who reads it, who studies it through the years, you come to a great foundational understanding of what yoga is, how yoga works, and how this universe is set up. So how do we get the most out of this spiritual guidebook, the Autobiography of a Yogi? It's something that we have to keep reading through the years. It's not like a movie that you see once and you don't want to see it again. You know how it turns out, and you lose all interest in watching it a second time. Autobiography of a Yogi, the more you read it, the more you get out of it. And that's why reading it over and over, or exposing yourself to it and going through its pages brings more to you. I know this because I've read it many times through the years. I counted out. My own copy of Autobiography of a Yogi is this one here. This was a 1972 edition. I think this was the book that I first read. I mean, as far as I can tell, this is, when I first came on the path, this was the book that I read. I enjoy reading the same book because my memory works in a funny way. I may not be able to exactly know where in the book a particular quote is, but I can always picture a quote as to where it sits on the page. So when I see something of a quote from the autobiography, I say, oh, I know that one. That one's in the middle of the page on the right-hand side, probably in Years in My Master's Hermitage. So I'll go there and I'll go through those 20 pages in that chapter, and sure enough, I'll see it there. I'll see that quote. So I enjoy reading from it because it impresses on my mind these different quotes and different stories that I like to refer to from time to time. And it's interesting, the more you read from Autobiography of a Yogi, and the more time you spend with it and think about it, you start seeing that there are layers and layers of truth in it. When I was down in the Parshnal Ashram as the house brother, we started a practice there that once a week on Fridays during study period, we'd all gather together, and we had a library down there, have a library down there with nice speakers in it and a stereo system. And what we did is we started at the very beginning, and we started listening to Ben Kingsley. We sat in a circle, everybody brought their own autobiography, and we just started reading from the very beginning along with Ben Kingsley, following on the page what he was saying. It was very powerful. I think it was powerful because we were using not only our eyes, but we were taking it in through our ears, and we were watching it on the page. And there is something about reading things in a group or meditating in a group. You're laughing at the same jokes. You're contemplating the same puzzles that Master's talking about, that the Guru is talking about. There's a power in it. I always felt, we did this once a year. We would start in the spring and finish in the fall. Just 45 minutes, maybe once a week. You gradually get through it. We always felt at the end of it that we'd all been on a journey together and that we were better off because we had done that. So read it often. The more you read it, the more you'll feel like you understand it a bit better. I was just talking with one of the monks, one of my brother monks here, who's my age and came in just about the same time as me. When I told him that I'm giving a class on Autobiography of a Yogi, he said he remembered when he first came on the path. He came on the path back on the east coast of the United States. He was visiting a retreat there up in Shaftesbury. And at one point, Brother Premomoy was coming to visit and give a retreat there. And so when Brother Premomoy came, the retreat coordinator asked him, can you come with me? I have to go to the airport to pick up Brother Premomoy. He said, sure. He didn't know who Brother Premomoy was, but he went, and they picked up Brother Premomoy. Brother Premomoy knew this retreat coordinator for many years, and so they were friends already. But this young disciple, he had just come on the path. He introduced himself to Brother Premomoy, and Brother said hello, and he asked him, have you read Autobiography of a Yogi? And he said to him, yes, sir, I read it before I came on the path. It's what propelled me to come on the path. And Brother said to him, read it 10 times, then you'll begin to start to understand it. We need to keep going through it. We need to keep asking ourselves, what is the lesson Master's giving us here? Let me give you a couple examples. Sometimes you read a story, something that our Guru writes in Autobiography of a Yogi, and you don't quite know what's the message there. It's good to stop and think about it. because often through the years I've seen that if I've spent the time thinking about it, the answer becomes clear. And it takes on, then that story always takes on a little different meaning in your life. Let me read you this. This is Sashi and the Three Sapphires. This friend of our guru who it took a while for him to understand, Sri Yukteswar's guidance, and he really never got it. Our guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, writes, "It was my proudest privilege to bring college friends to meet my guru. Many of them would lay aside, at least in the ashram, their fashionable academic cloak of religious skepticism. One of my friends, Sashi, spent a number of happy weekends in Serampore. Master became immensely fond of the boy and lamented that his private life was wild and disorderly. Sashi, unless you reform, 1 year hence you will be dangerously ill." Sri Yukteswar gazed at my friend with affectionate exasperation. "Mukunda is the witness. Don't say later that I didn't warn you." Sashi laughed. "Master, I will leave it to you to interest a sweet charity of cosmos in my own sad case. My spirit is willing, but my will is weak. You are my only savior on earth. I believe in nothing else. At least you should wear a 2-carat blue sapphire. It will help you." "I can't afford one. Anyhow, dear Guruji, if trouble comes, I fully believe that you will protect me." "In a year you will bring to me 3 sapphires," Sri Yukteswar replied. "They will be of no use then." Variations on this conversation took place regularly. "I can't reform," Sashi would say in comical despair. "And my trust in you, Master, is more precious to me than any stone." A year passed. One day I was visiting my guru at the Calcutta home of his disciple, Naran Babu. About 10 o'clock in the morning, as Sri Yukteswar and I were sitting on the second-floor parlor, I heard the front door open. "Master," Sri Yukteswar straightened stiffly. "It is that Sashi," he remarked gravely. "The year is now up. Both his lungs are gone. He has ignored my counsel. Tell him I don't want to see him now." Half stunned by Sri Yukteswar's sternness, I raced down the stairway. Sashi was ascending. "Oh, Mukunda, I do hope Master is here. I had a hunch he might be." "Yes, but he doesn't wish to be disturbed." Sashi burst into tears and brushed past me. He threw himself at Sri Yukteswar's feet, placing there 3 beautiful sapphires. "Omniscient Guru, the doctors say I have pulmonary tuberculosis. They give me only 3 months to live. I humbly implore your aid. I know you can heal me." "Isn't it a bit late now to be worrying over your life? Depart with your jewels. Their time of usefulness is past." Master then sat sphinx-like in an unrelenting silence, punctuated by the boy's sobs for mercy. An intuitive conviction came to me that Sri Yukteswar was merely testing the depth of Sashi's faith in the divine healing power. I was not surprised a tense hour later when Master turned a sympathetic gaze on my prostrate friend. "Get up, Sashi. What a commotion you make in another person's house. Return the sapphires to the jewelers. They are an unnecessary expense now. But get an astrological bangle and wear it. Fear not, in a few weeks you shall be well." Sashi's smile illumined his tear-marred face like a sudden sun over a sodden landscape. "Beloved Guru, shall I take the medicines prescribed by the doctors?" "Just as you wish. Drink them or discard them. It does not matter. It is as impossible for you to die of tuberculosis as it would be for the sun and moon to interchange their positions." Sri Yukteswar added abruptly, "Go now, before I change my mind." With an agitated bow, my friend hastily departed. I visited him several times during the next few weeks and was aghast to find his condition increasingly worse. "Sashi cannot last through the night." These words from his physician and the spectacle of my friend, now reduced almost to a skeleton, sent me post-haste to Serampore. My guru listened coldly to my cheerful report. "Why do you come here to bother me? You have already heard me assure Sashi of his recovery." I bowed before him in great awe and retreated to the door. Sri Yukteswar said no parting word but sank into silence, his unwinking eyes half open. Their vision fled to another world. I returned at once to Sashi's home in Calcutta. With astonishment, I found my friend sitting up, drinking milk. Oh, Mukunda, what a miracle. 4 hours ago, I felt Master's presence in my room. My terrible symptoms immediately disappeared. I feel that through his grace, I am entirely well. In a few weeks, Sashi was stouter and in better health than ever before. But his reaction to his healing was tinged with ingratitude. He seldom visited Sri Yukteswar again. My friend told me one day that he so deeply regretted his previous mode of life that he was ashamed to face Master. I can only conclude that Sashi's illness had had the contrasting effect of stiffening his will and impairing his manners. So this story was very confusing to me, because outwardly our Guru Paramahansa Yogananda explains that Sashi, when he was healed by Swami Sri Yukteswar, well, his will stiffened and his manners were impaired. And that's what our Guru took away from why he never went back to Swami Sri Yukteswar again. But I started thinking about it, wondering what was it that really drove him away. When I came in the ashram back some years ago, Brother Premamoy was in charge of the postulants who came in. And he often would point out to us when the situation was right. He would say that if you abuse something, Divine Mother takes it away from you. And he had a very simple saying. He said, you abuse it, you lose it. Meaning if you, whatever it might be in your life, if you take it for granted, if you waste it, if you don't appreciate it, don't have the gratitude for things that come to you, well, it's taken away from you. I think that's at the principle of this story. This story here is that principle is what our Guru is showing here. Sashi did not appreciate being around Swami Sri Yukteswar because he couldn't follow the simplest of directions. It wasn't even that Sri Yukteswar was asking him to transform his whole life, although he was saying you need to be a little more, less out of control in your life. He was trying to give him instruction there. But he said, but at least wear a sapphire. At least wear a sapphire. And even that Sashi could not do. Oh, sir, I don't have the money for one. Besides, I have full faith in your protection and you'll be fine. Well, as that went on, it got to a place where Swami Sri Yukteswar couldn't really help him. And then this principle kicked in, where if you abuse it, you lose it. It's a tremendous privilege to be drawn to the Guru's teachings, to be drawn, in his case, to the feet of a Guru. And to abuse that by not paying attention or not even making a little bit of effort toward following the directions and instructions that Swami Sri Yukteswar had for him. It drove him away. His will stiffened, his manners were impaired. He no longer went to Swami Sri Yukteswar. See, these kinds of lessons, and I'm not saying that this particular lesson is something we all need to know, but underneath the stories and autobiography of a yogi, there's layers and layers of instruction, of clarity on what's expected on the spiritual path, of direction for each one of us in our life, and how we can follow these directions and move closer to God. So it is a spiritual guidebook in many ways, and if you use it that way, you can find that it helps you. If you come across some story, or if you read something that's interesting to you, think about it. Go back to it. Read it again and again. What is Yogananda telling me? What is the Guru telling me? Is there something I need to learn here? And it's wonderful, it's charming, it's expanding when you start seeing these different lessons that are underneath the texts in that book. You find that the Guru is speaking to you through his, in his kindness, in his compassion, in his wisdom, and guiding you along the way. Another one comes to mind. This one will be quick. This is about Kashi Reborn and Discovered. You know, this wonderful chapter where one of the boys at the Ranchi school dies, and suddenly at 12 years old, Master loves him. He has promised this boy that he will go and find him, and of course Master talks about, our Guru talks about this technique that he developed in which he could feel where Kashi had been reborn. and how he visited him after he was reborn and helped him on the spiritual path. But just the beginning of it is, Master says, we enjoyed a picnic lunch after we had reached our destination. I sat under a tree surrounded by the boys. Finding me in an inspirational mood, they plied me with questions. So our Guru was in this state where he could look into the future and answer questions of what was going to happen. Please tell me, sir, one youth inquired, if I shall always stay with you in the path of renunciation. Ah, no, I replied. You will be forcibly taken away to your home, and later you will marry. Incredulous, he made a vehement protest. Only if I am dead could I be carried home. But in a few months, his parents arrived to take him away, in spite of his tearful resistance. Some years later, he did marry. After answering many questions, I was addressed by a lad named Kashi. He was about 12 years old, a brilliant student, and beloved by all. Sir, he said, what shall be my fate? You shall soon be dead. An irresistible power, it seemed, forced the words from my lips. The disclosure shocked and grieved me as well as everyone else. Silently rebuking myself as an enfant terrible, I refused to answer further questions. On a return to the school, Kashi came to my room. If I die, will you find me when I am reborn and bring me again to the spiritual path? He asked amid sobs. I felt constrained to refuse this difficult occult responsibility, but for weeks afterward, Kashi pressed me doggedly. Seeing him unnerved to the breaking point, I finally consoled him. Yes, I promised, if the Heavenly Father lends his aid, I will try to find you. And the rest of the chapter completes the story, how the boy does die shortly thereafter, and how our Guru goes through his everyday life trying to find this boy that he promised he'd find. Now, right in the beginning, what happens is the Guru, Paramahansaji, gives us two different disciples. One who, facing something he doesn't want in the future, he says, never. I will resist it. There's not a chance that it could happen. And sure enough, it happens. And the other one, facing something terrible, he goes to the Guru and throws himself at his feet and says, will you help me? And even if the Guru says, I don't know whether I can, that's kind of a difficult responsibility, he keeps pressing it. He keeps incessantly asking him until finally the Guru says, okay, I give up. I'll find you if the Heavenly Father will aid me. You know, this is a tremendous lesson for devotees, for people on the path, on the spiritual path. If you hold the hand of the Guru, if you really make an effort to connect and develop that personal relationship with him, you find that he helps you through all of the difficulties you face in life. The book is replete with many of those kinds of stories. It just, every time you read it, I'm thrilled at it. And the different stories come to mind, different examples come to mind. I remember there's one of my brother monks here, a dear friend, who we were out walking somewhere, and I don't know how it happened, but he got a cut on his finger as we were out walking, and he he covered it up, and he said to me, he pushed his dangling arm into its stump, and lo, it adhered. The blood inexplicably ceased to flow. Then he said, come to me under yonder tree in 3 days, and you shall find me fully healed. Now, this is a quote from when Yogananda went off to the Himalayas as a boy, and he was caught up by a policeman, and they were spending time in a police station, and they were recalling stories of different saints that they had seen. And one of these officials had said, yes, we saw a saint where his arm had been cut off with an axe, and yet he just pushed it into his stump, and lo, it adhered. You know, these kinds of, it's not only the funny reference from the book, but it's just the perfect English that Master used. I think one small, not so small thing is that the reading of this book in a very very deep way, it gives you a tremendous education It gives you a tremendous education. I really learned the English language, I think, through the Autobiography of a Yogi. I mean, certainly I spoke it, but this is, it's written in a way that elevates the mind and expands the understanding and the ability to think. You know, having the perfect way of expressing that allows thought to grow. It's hard to talk about because it's such a book that you feel you have so many feelings for. It's through the years, it touches you in many different ways. There's a famous introduction that was given to a book, Gitanjali by Tagore. And it was an introduction that was written by William Butler Yeats, a famous poet in England, in London in those days. He came across the Gitanjali, which was the translation. Tagore had taken his poems and he himself had translated them into English. And this was the book that he won the Nobel Prize for in 1914, I believe. But this introduction was written in 1912, and there was one section in it, I remember coming across it, I looked it up. And this was William Butler Yeats was saying about about this book. He said, "I have carried the manuscript of these translations about with me for days, reading it in railway trains or on top of the omnibuses and in restaurants. And I have often had to close it, lest some stranger would see how much it moved me. These lyrics display in their thought a world I have dreamed of all my life long." This is how he feels about a book that comes directly from the heart. You know, and I think that disciples of this path, disciples of Paramahansa Yogananda, they feel the same way about Autobiography of a Yogi. Really, the fundamental, or one of the greatest reasons for the autobiography is it introduces Yogananda's disciples to the Guru. How many stories we've heard through the years that I was walking through a bookstore and I saw this picture and I just had to have the book. Or this picture, I saw it on a newsstand somewhere. He speaks to his disciples through it. Another story one of the monks told me was that way back when this Ben Kingsley CD first came out in SRF, he received a phone call. And the person on the other end of the line said, "Hello, this is Steve Jobs." And this monk said, "The Steve Jobs?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "I've read Autobiography 50 times. He said, "I just love the book. And I love this new recording you have of Ben Kingsley. I want to put it on iTunes. Do you know what iTunes are?" And he said, "Yes, I'm familiar with iTunes." He said, "Well, I like to put it out so people can hear this." And so this monk, he didn't know what to do. He said, "Well, let me check and I'll get back to you." Steve Jobs proceeded to give him his email address and told him to get back in touch with his secretary, and that he was very interested in this and would see it through the production end. You know, the book Autobiography of a Yogi, it reaches people who are receptive, no matter who they may be. You know, one of the other things that the autobiography teaches is it gives us an introduction to the gurus of Self-Realization Fellowship, who they are and how they met. The most beautiful section, and one of the most beautiful sections is, of course, our guru's meeting with Swami Sri Yukteswar. And we know that he was in Benares and he was in an ashram. He was very unhappy where he was. He was still looking around for his guru. And on a shopping trip one day with one of the residents at the ashram, they were walking through the crowded marketplace. And as they were walking, our master looked up an inconspicuous lane and saw a Swami in the ochre robes. And he said he looked familiar to him. But then doubt assailed him. He said, "Dreamer, walk on." He told himself, you're dreaming this. He's not someone you know. And we know from that story how wonderful it is. He started walking away, and as he was walking, his feet got heavier and heavier. He got to a place we couldn't move them. And he turned around toward the saint and they became normal again. And then he realized that the saint was magnetically calling him to him. So running up the lane and falling on his knees, he recognized him immediately and said, Gurudeva. And Swami Sri Yukteswar said to him, "Oh, my own, you have come to me. How many years I have waited for you." Again and again he said these words in Bengali, his voice tremulous with joy. The recognition of guru and disciple. Really one of the most profound passages in the whole book. Autobiography of a Yogi, for many of us, that is our first introduction to our guru. That is us falling on our knees. And that is the guru saying, "How many years I have waited for you." You can use it as such, and use it as a foundational getting to know the guru, walking around with him. He's basically giving you insights into the spiritual path. Once you recognize him as your guru, and once he pulls you to him as a disciple. You also look at the other gurus. You see the perfection, the absolute perfection in the line of gurus we have. Babaji, in communion with Christ, bring this Kriya Yoga, lost from the golden ages, bring it back so that mankind can benefit from it. He calls to him Lahiri Mahashai, who's an incarnation of yoga. So he has this tremendous ability to comprehend and understand the intricacies of yoga. Gives him Kriya, and Lahiri Mahashai spreads it in his way. Then Swami Sri Yukteswar. Very interesting the way he first really meets Babaji. He's at a Kumbh Mela, he's walking around, he's seeing beggars and chaos everywhere, and he's critical of it. And then he meets Babaji. Babaji calls him over. And he says to Babaji, "I was just thinking that the scientists in the West are probably more pleasing to God than many here at this Kumbh." And Babaji appreciated that he had a capacity and an ability to see that the West, the scientific approach to life, was a necessary component for balance and for really the understanding and practice of yoga. And of course, from Swami Sri Yukteswar, our guru came. He went to him for training, and Sri Yukteswar was able to impart that east-west balance in our guru. And his ability, Swami Sri Yukteswar's ability to look at scriptures and understand the hidden meanings, what was behind them. He taught this to our guru. So when Yogananda came to the West, he was the perfect representative of India, understanding what was at the heart of the West and what its qualities were. These kinds of understandings come when you keep going over the stories that you read in autobiography. Everyone is there as a lesson, as something that can inspire us and explain things to us. There was one other story I came across concerning Sahajamata, who was one of the disciples who were around Gurudeva. And she worked for years in the editorial department. A very simple, sweet, sincere person who had a tremendous amount of wisdom. And the story is this. It said that one of the younger nuns, before meeting with a group of SRF members from a distant country, asked Sahajamata for advice on what to say to inspire the visitors. With the concise and concentrated wisdom so characteristic of her, Sahajamata simply said, "Tell them they have a living guru by their side from the moment they read Autobiography of a Yogi." They have a living guru by their side from that moment. The Autobiography of a Yogi is an introduction to the guru-disciple relationship. It is a companion that gives instruction and help and guidance as that relationship strengthens through the years. It's a profound piece of literature. It is a profound book, and if we approach it in that way, we find the benefits that are there. And to conclude, our Guru wrote this to Taramata. This was at the completion of the book when Guruji was feeling so joyful and so just like he had answered what his Guru was asking of him. And he said to Taramata, he said, God and Gurus ever bless you for your valiant and loving part in bringing this book out. At last, the sacred fragrance of God, of my Gurus and the Masters, have come out through the secret doors of my soul. After unending hazards and ceaseless efforts, all difficulties are burning in the everlasting flame of joy. Our Guru Master was thrilled when this book came out 75 years ago. He knew that this was one of the missions, one of the things he had to do. He had to write this. This is the foundational teachings of what we have in Self-Realization Fellowship. And it's a masterpiece. The more we go to it, then the more we realize the depth and the importance of it. So I hope and pray you all have a wonderful convocation. Pick up autobiography during this week and read from parts of it. And when you go home, make it a part of your study. You'll find it to be a ceaseless friend, an inspiring companion as you travel on your way on the spiritual path. And we wish you well. We pray for you that you experience the blessings of being in that sacred presence of God and Gurus. Jai Guru.